Okay, I just had a slight moment of panic. I started by using these stainless steel M3 screws, and I got a little impatient, and one of the holes was binding up, so I figured I'll just drive it in a little bit. It's probably a little bit of corrosion or something like that, and naturally, being stainless steel, the head twisted right off, leaving about a 16th of an inch of the threaded end left, and when I tried to put a pair of vice grips on it, it broke the rest of what was sticking out of the panel. So I wound up having to take this itty bitty drill bit, and fortunately I was able to get it centered, drilled through the center, and then took the appropriate size tap in my drill here and kind of ran that through the hole to drive the outer threads out of there. And luckily didn't destroy the threads inside the panel, so we got things installed as you just saw. So I'm gonna take this into the next room and we'll put this back on the bike. Before I forget to mention it, in an effort to protect the absurdly brittle powder coat that I have on this frame from the metal mounting points on the seat, I got some of this Plasta Dip and then just painted a couple heavy coats on this is where it rests on the back, and then these fit under the posts up near the battery. So just as I'm sliding this on and off, trying to give it a little bit of a cushion, because this powder coat, every time I touch this bike a piece flakes off, so I'm gonna have to really be careful with it. But this, I've taken the seat on and off a couple times. It seems to really be holding up well. Alright guys, took my very first ride on the Super Hawk this morning. Only put about a mile on it around the neighborhood for a couple reasons. One, I don't have a plate on it, and two, I didn't want to get too far. Our neighborhood just has kind of a one way in, one way out, and it's a real small loop, so you can either kind of loop around and around if you want to, or you got to get out on the main road. And I was again, no plate on it, and I'm not quite ready to go that far. Plus, I don't have any rear view mirrors, so it's a little sketchy. This bike did not come with turn signals, so all those things combined, just decided to play it a little bit safe and just do a lap. So put about a mile on it. Seemed to run great. I have no experience with this motor, so I'm not sure what to expect, but shifted through the gears, seemed to pull pretty strong, nothing fell off. Nothing caught fire, so I'm going to call that a win. It's a couple hours later now. I was give it a little bit of time to cool down. I wanted to pull the plugs and take a look at those. It's running a little bit rich, just need a little bit of minor tweaking there. One thing I did notice when I came out into the garage is it smelled quite a bit like gas. So fortunately, I've gotten in the habit of throwing this little towel here because previously I'd noticed, and I've got them off now, but the little banjo fittings on the carburetors where the fuel lines connect seem to be weeping. So I thought I had fixed the issue. Apparently I hadn't. I'm glad I put this on here. I don't know how durable this paint is. So anyways, I've pulled those off. I've got them over on the bench here. So they're just kind of mini banjo bolts like you'd find on brake fittings. They've got these little aluminum washers. So I'm going to replace these with some copper washers and see if that fixes the issue. Pretty straightforward, kind of a pain to get off when the bike's assembled, but if this is the worst of it, I think we're in pretty good shape. Alright, so I've got those banjo bolts fitted with the copper washers, fuel lines hooked back up. I'm actually going to turn the fuel on and just let it set in the on position for an hour or two, just to make sure we don't have any more fuel issues. Hopefully this is a simple fix. If not, we'll dig into it a little bit further. Unfortunately, the copper washers didn't fix the problem. So what I'm going to do now is I've got the original aluminum washers, and I'm actually putting a very thin coat of this Permatex aviation gasket maker. I've used this stuff in the past before. It's worked really well. So I put it on the carburetor, on the banjo bolt, and then on both sides of this little fitting here. And then I'm going to do those up. Probably let them set overnight. I've already done this one. So I think what the problem is just there's corrosion on not only this surface here, but I noticed it on the bolt as well. And unfortunately I don't have a good way to resurface these, and I'm not even sure if these were ever sold separately. I'm sure you could get something that would work, but I looked at the parts diagrams and there's not a separate listing for these fittings. So trying to work with what I have. Basically I just want to fix this so I don't have to worry about gas leaking all over the freshly rebuilt engine, and I also don't want the motorcycle covered in gas as I'm riding. So this in theory should work. I'm not going to really know until everything is kind of set up and reinstalled. But the other issue I'm having, and this is basically because during testing I kept draining the float bowls because I didn't want gas sitting in there. These teeny little aluminum washers are now leaking as well. So I don't really want to do the same thing with the gasket maker because I need to be able to take those in and out. So I'm going to look for small fiber gaskets and see if I have better luck with those. Just part of owning old motorcycles, you're going to run into stuff like this. And unfortunately, parts for this bike cost a fortune. So I'm trying to do my best to repair what I have rather than just running out and buying replacement parts. I'd really hoped that these copper washers would have done the trick. It kind of did on one, but it definitely didn't on the other carburetor. So as far as I'm concerned, it was not a viable fix. I was hoping to wrap this video series up with a nice long ride, but unfortunately I'm still waiting for the antique plate from Harrisburg. So, and here in Pennsylvania I always register these older bikes as antiques for a couple reasons. One, it's a permanent registration, so you just pay one fee up front for as long as you own the bike, and two, that exempts you from the annual inspections. So anyways, it's not a plate that AAA can just hand you. The paperwork goes off to Harrisburg. They mail you a new title with the antique certification on it, as well as an antique plate. So I don't have either of those. So I've I have taken this around the block. It seems to be running great. This was my first experience riding with this engine, so some of the noises it's making sound normal-ish, but it certainly rides and sounds different from your 350s and 450s. So I'll do a little bit of a kind of a slow walk around here. You guys can see the fit and finish. I'm really thrilled with how it turned out. There were plenty of times during this project where I just kept telling myself, never again, never again. Restoration's got its pros and cons for sure, but I think the result was worth it here. I will say this, I will not powder coat another bike in the future. I think that was the root of most of my fitment frustrations, which I knew that going into it. It does add quite a bit more thickness than paint would, but the brittleness is what I did not expect. Everyone online, you read, oh, it's so durable, it's so durable, it's way better than paint. Well, either the guy I had do it didn't know what he was doing, or that's all bullshit about the strength. I mean, it's basically you just coated your bike in plastic, so once that starts chipping and peeling off, there's not really any stopping it. And with paint, you could sand it back a little bit and touch it up, and I guess it's got a little bit more give to it. It's going to scratch before it chips. This powder coat just chips in huge chunks. So again, that's my experience. I'm sure plenty of other people obviously have had different experiences because they're still recommending it. So this may be just kind of the luck of the draw here with me, or again, the guy I had do it may not have done it correctly, or who knows. But anyways, paint really turned out well, even though it took me a few tries, and the side panels on there look amazing. Those that I had re-chromed years and years ago. Original seat, these cost a fortune even in terrible condition, so this one unfortunately is in pretty good shape considering its age. It's got one little patched spot on the other side, but you really can't notice it, so that I left alone. It's been up in my home office basically since I bought the bike, so I'm sure my wife's thrilled that that's no longer leaning up against the wall. I did finally track down a replacement switch. Turns out the switch that was on there and was slightly broken was not even it looked very similar to this, but it was not a Honda switch. I'm not sure what it was off. Looked like it was some kind of like machine switch or something, and the previous owner had kind of drilled and tapped so that he could use a set screw similar to the way this one fastens on. But that had me scratching my head, because when I got this one I'm thinking, well, wait a minute, maybe this one's not correct, but this one was. It was in a original Honda bag. So then the only other thing, I have mirrors for it. I ordered these use the same mirrors as the CB160, so they're the little kind of rectangular mirrors, except these are aftermarket, and this hole here is threaded for the larger post on the later style mirrors, the round ones that you see on the 350, 360, 450, and actually most of the Hondas from that time. So I'm not going to be able to run the correct mirrors, but I'm still going to run a set of Honda mirrors, so that's good enough for me. These are just a little bit larger, and then the original posts for the correct mirrors just slid right down in there. So I did test fit a pair from one of my 350s. Those worked, so I ordered a set off at eBay, original Honda mirrors, so those should be here soon, and hopefully that plate will be. With everything kind of running at half capacity, I'm not sure how long it's going to take to get that plate. Usually they're pretty good, maybe 3 or 4 weeks, but these days it's anyone's guess. So as soon as I do get one, I'll definitely do a kind of a riding video. I'd love to get some opinions on some of the the whines and noises I'm hearing. From what I've described on some of the forums, it seems to be normal. Definitely happy at higher RPMs than some of the bikes I'm used to riding. This thing really doesn't even like to be shifted into a higher gear lower than 5,000 or 6,000 RPMs. It'll kind of bog down, but other than that, for being a 305cc engine, this thing pulls hard, so it should be pretty fun to ride here in southwestern Pennsylvania. We've got tons of hills and curves and nice back roads, so looking forward to that. But no gas leaks, no oil leaks, everything seems to be staying where it belongs. So for now, until I can get this thing out on the road and put some more miles on it, I'm going to mark this one as done and start looking at our next project, which is sitting back there. Had to move it out of the way. So that's another CB450, but we're doing something a little bit different this time. So if you haven't already, subscribe, and I should have a video getting started on this one in a week or two. I just got back from my brother's house in New York, about 5 hours from here, to pick that one up, and that is going to be the fall and winter project for the kids and I, so I'm excited about that.